to StrangeBrew MTG, a casual deck building channel for Magic the Gathering and EDH or Commander. I have a Commander deck here that is probably one of my favorite Commander decks right now. It's probably the most synergistic and is actually pretty powerful. It has a weird partner pairing of Nadier, Agent of the Duskanel, and Kydele, Chosen of Crewfix. When first looking at these commanders, a lot of people wonder if it's like elf tribal or because it's Sultai colors with the black, green, and blue, if I'm just going to be doing a bunch of graveyard shenanigans, but it does neither of that. The theme of the deck is really artifact token tribal, I guess. It's mainly like clue tokens, food tokens, and treasure tokens. The whole inspiration of this deck was because I really wanted to build around the commander Lannis, Cryptozoologist. I really liked her ability, the fact it was like a villainous wealth on a creature. She made clue tokens whenever a non-token creature entered. So I was started to kind of put together the pieces for that. And in doing so, I just was trying to find like how I could gain the most value off of sacking the clue tokens. And I came across cards like Marionette Master and Disciple of the Vault, and though they were black, I was like, that works perfectly with clue tokens. So from there, it just kind of snowballed into what I could do with that if I added black to Lannis. And that's where like Nadier definitely came in as one of the better commanders for this deck. Because he reads, whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on him. And it doesn't matter what kind of token it is, as long as it's a token. And then when he leaves the battlefield, you make a number of 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens equal to its power. So what's cool, though, about the deck is I don't need to have him out specifically to have the deck running. Then it just kind of also became like this weird secret commander type deck where I had a lot of legendaries in the deck that kind of also benefited off of having these tokens out. So another creature I wanted to add to this deck was definitely Guillaume, Master Chef. Now, just like Lannis, he wants like a lot of non-token creatures to enter. He triggers at the end step though, but you still get a lot of tokens. And he has a great secondary ability of sacrificing a food to protect your own creatures, make them indestructible, or you can tap down your opponent's creatures. So there's a lot of protection there with him. And both of them go really well together in the deck. Another great secret commander for this deck would be Chatterfang, Squirrel General. Just having him on board while you're making all these other tokens with everything else in the deck just gives you like a tremendous amount of value by also making Squirrel tokens. Because those also trigger, again, your commander Nadier. Now, they aren't artifact tokens, but that's why I do have cards in here like Nadier's Nightblade, that whenever a token at all leaves, just like Nadier, triggers Nadier's Nightblade and causes your opponents to lose 1 life and you to gain 1 life. So both these cards are definitely powerhouses in the deck. Speaking of powerhouses, this is a very powerful card in its own right. Urza, Lord High Artificer. Now, he does kind of everything you would want to do in this deck. He comes in with a token, it is an artifact. He also has this great ability so that you can tap an untapped artifact you control to add blue. So if you make clue tokens, food tokens, treasure tokens, whatever, they now tap for mana. And then I think the thing that makes him even more powerful is that now you have something to do with your mana because his other ability is a mana sink that lets you cast free spells. Another benefit to having him on the board is he's kind of like a bait to get out your opponent's removal. A lot of people see him and they think I'm just gonna like make infinite mana and, you know, play every card in my deck, but usually I don't even use him for that. He's just great mana ramp and gets me an extra token. So it does bait out the removal in your opponent's hand, so that way you can keep the stuff you really want out, which just gives you more value from when tokens leave or when creatures die. Speaking of that, a great card in this deck is a newer card from the newer commander set. It's Eloise Nephalia Sleuth. And she reads, whenever another creature you control dies, investigate. So you make a clue token. And then whenever you sacrifice a token, you surveil one. Any token at all, doesn't matter what kind of token it is. and we have a lot of different ways to sacrifice our tokens in this deck. The best thing about clues, foods, and treasures is that they sack themselves. So it definitely triggers LOEs, so we get more card advantage from the surveil. Clue tokens in general are really great because you can stack the triggers to draw the card after you surveil, so you can kind of get a little bit more card selection out of that, which is really great. And then another great toolbox, almost secret, I would also call this probably a secret commander in the deck, is Feign the Broker. This is also from a recent commander set, and I remember seeing him and just thinking, man, he's like a trading post on a creature with how many different modes he has and the way that he can even untap himself, but he can do pretty much everything we need in the deck to keep our engines going. He taps to sacrifice a creature, put 2+1/+1 counters on a target creature. You tap remove a counter from a creature you control to create a treasure token. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, make a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying, and then 3 and a black you can untap Feign the Broker. Now, we don't have a ton of flyers in this deck, but this is a great utility just to make sure that we have those flyers as blockers. He can make us more treasure tokens. I mean, Nadier is going to be getting counters, so he pairs really well with that. And then he's also a sacrifice outlet to put counters on, so he kind of like is an engine in himself if you can get him going. But he has a ton of synergy with everything else in this deck. Another legendary creature we have that I wouldn't really call a secret commander in this deck, but is really great with what we're trying to do. It's Kydele and Nadier, Twin Casters. We run this as a Parallel Lives, but we also run Parallel Lives just to make sure that we're doubling up our tokens. Kydele and Nadier are just great also because they have that ward ability, so she's a little harder to get off the table. And the more tokens we make, the more options it opens up the rest of the deck for us. Now, some of the best token makers in our deck. Gilded Goose does everything we need. He comes in with a token, he has a way to make tokens, and then he has a way to value off of those tokens and help us out with mana fixing and mana ramp. So then with that, another pairing of cards here, the Tireless Tracker and the Tireless Provisioner, both really great in the deck. Landfall triggers, making tokens. Tireless Tracker here has another dual use, is then whenever we sacrifice a token, he gets a counter on him, which also synergizes with Feign. And making those clue tokens, again, is just extra card value. Why Kydele was a great partner for Nadier in this deck was that if I have a bunch of clue tokens out and I'm using them to like draw a bunch of cards, Kydele is just going to tap for more and more mana. So she can ramp us to make sure that we still have mana to cast more of the spells that we draw. Another great token maker in this deck is Pitiless Plunderer. There's a number of different ways we can sacrifice creatures in this deck, as I've shown you some of them already, but I wanted to make sure that I got value from creatures entering and creatures leaving the battlefield. This accents almost every one of the secret commanders in the deck really, really well. 2 more ways to sacrifice creatures that really go well with them would be Ravenous Squirrel and Trading Post. Now, Ravenous Squirrel does a ton of work in this deck. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact or a creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. That's another synergy with Feign. He is a squirrel, so he also synergizes with Chatterfang. He also has a way to sacrifice things on him. Pay 1 black and a green, sacrifice an artifact or creature. You gain 1 life and you draw a card. So he can turn any of our tokens into draw power, which is really, really great. Now, Trading Post, again, is just like Feign, a real toolbox in this deck. We're making a bunch of artifact tokens, so the bottom ability there, 1 tap, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card, comes in handy a ton. You can sacrifice a creature, so we can get value off of that, and return an artifact card from our graveyard to our hand. Now, one of the best artifacts in our deck that if someone ever gets rid of it, we would want to get back from our graveyard would be Cart Clan Ironworks. It turns all of our tokens into mana, and it's a sack outlet for them, so they hit the graveyard, triggering all of the effects that we have there, like Disciple of the Vault, Marionette Master. Another really great artifact and creature in the deck would be Academy Manufactor. Now, this one's pretty crazy in the deck. It ramps our strategy tenfold by creating a ton of tokens whenever we create one of these clue, foods, or treasures. This was definitely a focal point of the deck. I think I originally just wanted to build it with Lannis, obviously, but to really gain a bunch of value off of it, making these secret commanders was really the way to go. Another great token maker and tutor that I think is really underrated is Tamio's Journal. This card I don't see in a lot of decks, but in this deck, it's just a powerhouse. It creates clue tokens at every upkeep, so it's extra card draw. Use them in any other way. We can sack 3 of them and search for anything in our library, and it helps us get out all of the other, secret commanders if we need them. And that was kind of a problem I saw on the deck, was making sure that I got out these secret commanders to keep my deck engines running. A great card for this is Time of Need. It's 1 in a green. Search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. If we're needing flyers, we can go get Fane. If we're needing to make more tokens, we can get Lannis or Gaiom. We do have Worldly Tutor in the deck. We're also running Defense of the Heart. Now, a lot of people see this card come out and think, oh, he's about to do some infinite combo. I do have 1 infinite combo in the deck, but it only needs 1 creature and a bunch of other stuff to do it. It's kind of like a 4-card combo, really, but this really just gives us the most value we can. And another way to find some of your key pieces in the form of creatures is Protean Hulk. Now, a cool interaction with him is for mana ramp, we are running like Liquid Metal Torque, something that could actually turn Protean Hulk into an artifact if we have an artifact sack outlet, like Quark Clan Ironworks or something like that. I think this is a really underrated card for ramp just because, if you're running green or white, you do have artifact and enchantment removal. And this is a 2-mana rock that can turn any non-land permanent into an artifact. So you could even turn like a Planeswalker into an artifact and get rid of it with like a Nature's Claim or something like that. Speaking of ramp, though, this next card is another powerhouse that works so well in this deck. It's Inspiring Statuary. You're making so many clue, food, and treasure tokens, and being able to turn them into mana for your non-artifact spells has been very powerful. I've seen a lot of people actually use their removal on this instead of other things on board, just because they've seen how much value I get off of it. Now, we are running 3 colors, so for fixing, we do run a Chromatic Lantern. Weirding Wood is an interesting card that, it comes in with a clue token when it enters. It's great for fixing. Another great enchantment in this deck is Ulvenwald Mysteries. So whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate, you make a clue. And then whenever you sacrifice a clue, you put a 1/1 white human soldier creature token on the battlefield. So this makes extra tokens. You get value from your non-token creatures dying. And then, say you have a bunch of your non-token creatures out. If someone field wipes, you still have card draw on board. You have artifacts, so you can keep your engine running just with a few more pieces. We are running 1 Planeswalker in the deck. It's Oko with Thief of Crowns. He's also pretty powerful just because of that +1 ability. But really, more often than not, I use him for his +2 ability. I really only use the +1 if there's something I need to remove and I don't have any other way to remove it. But this is another one that kind of baits your opponents into using removal, or instead of swinging at your life total, they're swinging at Oko because they know how powerful this card is. It's always a side benefit, I think, of having Planeswalkers in your deck is it's not like a Ghostly Prison effect or anything, but it takes your opponent's attention away from other things on the board, because a lot of times in the Commander game, you kind of have to deal with one problematic card at a time. Now, Oko does double as being removal and token generation, so I tried to make sure that the removal in my deck also did that. So we're running some kind of like unconventional removal in the form of like Crack Open and Root Out. They are at sorcery speed, but you do get tokens back. So sometimes that upside is actually more beneficial to you than you would think, even at sorcery speed. Our instant speed removal, we do have Bake Into a Pie that gets us food. And then we do run a couple counter spells in the deck, but I think the best one would be Spell Swindle. Commander is like the format to run your big splashy spells. Spell Swindle is one of the best counters in this deck. I usually wait for some big spell to be cast that would either wipe, like a board wipe or something like that. And as long as it's 5 mana or more, I'm getting like my cost back. So definitely worth it in the deck. Now, some of the weirder interactions in our deck that are actually pretty cool would definitely be Fairy Artisans. It's a 2/2 flyer for 4 mana, but whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you create a token copy of that creature, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. Then exile all other tokens created with Fairy Artisans. So it doesn't create a token when it enters, but you get a token on your opponent's turn that is an artifact. So we have a bunch of synergies with that, obviously. 2 great cards in this deck that help us with in multiple places would definitely be Kiyora's Follower and Seedborn Muse. Now, Kiyora's Follower is probably one of the best untappers, I think, in the game, because it says untap another target permanent. Now, we do have a commander in the command zone that has a tap ability on her, but again, with our secret commanders, I mean, Lannis, you can untap and sacrifice more clues. Feign, it's perfect with. And because it's untapped target permanent, untapping the trading post is great. Total amount of utility. Seedborn Muse, getting that untap. If we have Inspiring Statuary out, we're tapping all of our artifacts for mana to cast our spells, and then on our opponent's turn, we'll just untap everything. We have access to all of that again. Now, with these untappers, I will talk about the combo we do run in the deck. I don't usually like running like a bunch of infinite combos in a deck, but this one just kind of works out really well, and I like the way it has use of the tokens. And even if I don't have the combo, all of these cards are really good in the deck regardless. But how this combo works is with Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven, and Clock of Omens out, and then say you have either Parallel Lives or Adrix and Nev out that double your tokens, you will tap the Witch's Oven to sack the Cauldron Familiar, making you a food token, or hopefully 2. Tap 2 of your artifacts to untap Witch's Oven, sacrifice a food that you made to bring Cauldron Familiar back, and repeat the process. Now, I think Rule 0 is really great in Commander, and I do let people know that there is an infinite combo in the deck, just because I think it's good for people to know that there is a way to combo off. But there's a lot of times where I'd be playing 3-hour games, and they just kind of have to end. Another really cool way to win in this deck would be Rise and Shine, using it for its overload cost. If we have a massive amount of artifact tokens like clues, food, and treasure, turning them all into 4/4 creatures and just swinging is a really cool way to kill your opponents with food and clues. Probably one of the more meaner cards in this deck is Shrewd Negotiation. It is 5 mana to exchange control of target artifact you control and target artifact or creature you don't control. A lot of times there's a problematic creature that your opponents control, and sometimes it's their commander. This is kind of good against Voltron decks, I would say, where I'm about to lose to commander damage. If there's a way to get to their commander, I can give them a clue or a food and just take control of their commander. So it saves me from commander damage. Again, it is kind of a feel-bad card, but it's why I tend to try to build decks where I don't need the commander out to really keep my engines going, like I said. A lot of decks that I've built in the past, I've built solely around having my commander do all the work. And because of that, as soon as someone removes my commander, takes it out of the game and chants it with imprison in the moon, or makes it a 0/1 indestructible bug or something like that, you feel locked out and you can't recover very easily. So with this deck, not relying on either one of my commanders was something that I thought was really cool. Now, I didn't go through every single card in this deck just because I didn't want this to be crazy long. It probably already is, but please check out the deck list below. Now, there are budgetary options for everything in here. Not everyone has an Urza. I run fetch lands in this because, I cracked open a box of Modern Horizons 2 and got them and was like, this is cool. But this deck can be budget. Like I said, I may be running fetch lands and stuff like that, but I'm also running Crack Open and Sorcery Speed Removal. Now, like I said, this is probably one of the funnest decks I've ever built just because I'm always doing something. There's never a point in the game where I'm like, oh, I think I'm stuck, or there's nothing I can do. There's just a ton of different options. If this sounds at all interesting to you, please, again, check out that deck list. Let me know what you think. So after building this deck and deciding to make a video on it, I did look on like EDH Rec to try to see if there were any other Nadier and Kydele builds. And on EDH Rec, there's like 4 decks, I think. So there's just insufficient data for them to even have a page for them. So there was nothing I could net deck for this. I just kind of found the synergies on my own. And again, this is one of the most synergistic, fun decks I think I've ever built. If this looks interesting to you, I would definitely give it a try. Again, you can budget stuff in this deck if you go through the deck list. I'll try to maybe find some better budgetary options to switch out some cards. I already have a couple in mind. But if you have any suggestions or things that you would change in this deck, please let me know. Thanks for checking out this video and tuning in. I guess this is the part where I'm supposed to say click subscribe and smash all the buttons. All right, have a great day.